Hello, how is everybody? We hope you are well, and we want to welcome you to our STEM Care Package event, and we're very glad that you're here. I am Ann Merchant with the National Academy of Sciences.
I'm Rick Lovard, also with the National Academy of Sciences.
And the director of?
The Science and Entertainment Exchange.
There you go, just giving you a little prompt.
Thanks.
So we have our prescribed roles here after we say welcome to all of you. And mine is to say a little bit about the National Academy of Sciences. Now, it just started pouring rain here. So if you hear some thunder and some things, these are not intentional sound effects rather. They're what's happening outside of my window, because as always, we're now doing virtual events and each of us are in our homes and in our remote locations and not at the Academy. But for those of you who have not joined us previously or may not be familiar with the National Academy of Sciences, and it always bears repeating because we're a complicated place, but the National Academy of Sciences is a private nonprofit institution in Washington, D.C., and we were founded over 150 years ago by Abraham Lincoln with the intention of providing, for the most part, the federal government, but policymakers throughout the system with good advice on how to create good policy grounded in evidence and in expertise. And so we've been doing that for a really long time. And in this particular case, I would call out some of the ways in which we've been influential in education. So one of my favorites is that we like to say that we put an end to the reading war. Not that anybody was necessarily aware that there was a reading war, but whole language, phonics. Turns out there's a truce, and it's both. We also were responsible in the early days for the National Science Education Standards, and we have continued on that work, setting standards for education throughout the country. And it's a complicated landscape because the states have a lot to say about how things happen in their own territories, and then the federal government is involved. And so the Academy has had a lot to do with how we think about education, in particular science education, and we're very fortunate today to be joined by 3 Einstein Fellows, and the Einstein Fellows are amazing classroom teachers, some of whom remain in their classroom after they have completed that fellowship, and others who go on to do things in other ways and educate children in new landscapes. So it's very exciting that we have those 3 with us today. But part of our job is to communicate the work of the institution more broadly to different audiences, people who don't read those big reports and are not maybe served by the core work of the institution in that way. So that's why we have programs like the Science and Entertainment Exchange, of which Rick is the director.
So hi, I'm Rick Lovard. I'm the program director of the Science and Entertainment Exchange. So just a quick little bit about the Exchange before we dive into the event today. If you are a writer, producer, studio executive, someone in Hollywood, a storyteller, you have a question about science, you can call our hotline, 844-NEED-SCI. And I or someone on staff at the Exchange will answer the call and connect you with a field expert who can hopefully give you the advice you need about your story as it relates to science and inspire more and better science into your storyline. We've done over 300 events since we opened our doors more than 10 years ago, and over 3,000 consults on films like Avengers: Infinity War, Man of Steel, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. So if you are a STEM professional and you're just tuning in for the first time to this event today, please drop us a line, because we're always looking for more people who are interested in engaging storytellers and being a part of this community we've created. I want to thank a couple of people real quick. Thanks to Ameche, our AV tech, who is hopefully making this event run flawless. We really appreciate you. And it's not your fault if anything goes wrong. The whole office in DC, Courtney Sloan, Jeff Fishman, and of course, Sachi Gerben, who works with me out here in Los Angeles. I also want to thank graphic novelist Cecil Castellucci, who is live tweeting the event today. If you get a chance and you're interested, please check out her DC and Disney books like Frozen, Little Mermaid, and Batgirl. And I hope those are the right ones to mention, Cecil. We can talk later. Also our sponsors who made this event possible, in particular, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, without whom this event would not be happening today. Also the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Walt Disney Company, Film Nation, Google, Lyda Hill Foundation, Corteva, and individual donors like many of you who donated to this event. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And a little bit about the event structure today. You're going to hear from 3 speakers. If at any time during the talks you have a question, down here there's a little Q&A thing. You enter that. I'm going to be sending your questions to our moderator, Noana Lee, who will be running the Q&A today. So that's how you're going to be able to ask a question, is basically through that portal. So,
Rick is your voice.
Exactly. Well, editor, I don't know, something. Thank you very much. We appreciate your engagement, and please, we get a lot of questions on all our events, and we appreciate them. So please ask questions.
So if you're kind of wondering about some of the positioning, I know we've gotten some questions in the chat before and in the Q&A. What's this talk about Hollywood? And so that is why. It's because the Science and Entertainment Exchange was created more than 10 years ago to create that relationship and to generate better stories and more interesting science characters. So we are very glad that you are here today. As you know, this is an event, or as you, I assume, know that this is an event that was rescheduled. That we had originally put this on the calendar 2 weeks ago and then had to send you the news that we were recalendering it. And I think we all know that the day on which this was meant to take place was a very difficult day throughout our country and for many of us as individuals. I'm not saying that by coming back 2 weeks later that we feel like we're in a much better place, because I don't think that that is true. I think that we all struggle in our own way with what is happening in our country. And I think I share a lot of emotions that many of you likely have. There's something that I read recently. I think a lot of us have been doing a lot of reading, and somebody had referenced Dr. King's letters from a Birmingham jail and said, you know, are we looking for the negative piece that expresses the absence of tension, or are we looking for the positive piece that tells us that there's the presence of justice? And I think that there are a lot of thoughtful people today that we're going to hear from, and all of them have been thinking about this a lot. Our institution has a long history of producing a lot of research on implicit bias, implicit and explicit, on racism, systemic racism, on incarceration in this country, and more recently, the way in which COVID is disproportionately impacting communities of color. They're thinking very deeply about how they will continue to be of service to the nation, thinking about all of these topics. But there's also a recognition, I think it's important to say, that it's not always about more research, more workshops, more meetings, that a place like the Academies is built for that, but they also understand that the more research isn't going to tell us anything we don't already know. So the institution is making its contributions. I think we as people are thinking a lot about this as employees of this institution and as human beings in this world. In the last few events that I've done, I've sort of referenced little things that I've toured around for the last week or so on the internet. And I would point you to a couple of things. I found a website called Nonprofit AF. And as they say on there, AF, maybe it means amplified and focused. I'm reading their suggestions. Awesome and on fire, or amazing and fluffy. You can fill up in what the AF means. But it really is trying to get people in there to think about how the nonprofit world can be responsible and be productive in today's environment, and how nonprofits in particular should be thinking. There's also a piece by Eve Higginbotham, who is on our governing board at the institution, and she is with the Perelman School of Medicine at Penn. And she's written a piece called "My Heart is Broken, but I'm Sustained by Hope." And it's easily discoverable on the web, so I'd urge you to go there. And I also have been thinking a lot about Freeman Hrabowski, who's an educator, because this is an event that features a bunch of educators, a bunch of amazing educators. And Freeman Hrabowski he's on a lot of committees at the institution, but he also is the president of UMBC, and personally one of the most inspiring people I have ever met and heard speak. He's just an incredible human being. And these are not his words. I think they're Taoist. But coming from Freeman, they felt especially inspiring. He says, watch your thoughts because they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And I think those are words that I have often thought of in these last few weeks. And I credit, even though maybe he didn't make them up, I credit Freeman for that. But I know everyone's also dealing with a lot of the struggles that feel there are macro struggles, and then there are these micro struggles. And I think a lot of what we wanted to do with this event was sort of talk about those micro struggles, that there are our colleagues and friends who are at home with children who are now probably just finishing up school. And then maybe you're facing a summer without camp. And what does that look like? How do you go forward with that? And so we reached out to a group of people whom we thought could give an answer that would be helpful, or a set of answers. And so we wanted to be able to do something that felt positive and interesting. And so we hope that that's what this event does. As Rick said, we're going to turn it over to Nuwana Lee. Nuwana comes to us from the Fulton County Schools, and she's going to give us kind of like set the landscape, frame this up for us before we hear from our three amazing educators. And so I'm going to pass it to you, Nuwana, and let you come in and take us away, because that's your job next.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Appreciate it. I just wanted to start off by kind of talking a little bit about schooling during this COVID-19 pandemic. And this really almost goes without saying. We are in unprecedented and difficult times. Never before in history have we navigated a pandemic, economic collapse, mental despair, political unrest, a racial justice movement, and the closing of all of our schools across the nation all at the same time. So many working moms, dads, aunts, uncles, and grandparents, siblings, and guardians were immediately thrust into the role of caregiver, educator, nurse, psychologist, chef, entertainer, and stay-at-home executive, all rolled into one. School was conducted at the kitchen table, if it was conducted at all. Many families lacked Wi-Fi connections, computers, or transportation to go to the school and retrieve textbooks and work packets. Many families also experienced joblessness, and many high school students became the wage earner in their household. Those families who were fortunate enough to have the necessary tools to attempt digital learning faced additional hardships, as they were both expected to meet the demands of their job while working from home and simultaneously help teach and prepare their students for their upcoming physics exam. Melinda Moyer, a writer for the New York Times, framed this situation nicely. She writes, "There was a moment this month when I was helping my 8-year-old with his school science project while spelling the word mermaid aloud for my 5-year-old, while browning meat on the stove, while fielding a work call. That, I think, was the closest my head has ever come to exploding." Many of you can relate to this. For other parents, their students were overwhelmed by the social isolation they faced. While students are digital natives, they still value and need in-person interactions. Many students experienced mental crisis during this time and suffered from anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Some simply gave into the hopelessness and completely disengaged from school altogether, leaving parents feeling helpless. So let's be clear. This was not truly remote learning. It also was not homeschooling. This was crisis schooling. Parents were asked to fly the plane while they built it. And by the way, due to COVID-19, the parts are on back order from Amazon and will ship in 4 to 6 weeks. So what are some simple things that you can do during crisis schooling to streamline and manage the situation? Here are just a few quick suggestions to get you started. Create a schedule for both learning and chores. Having structure can comfort a child. Building the schedule with your child will allow them to have voice and choice as well as buy-in. Chunk their learning. Cognitive science supports that breaking learning into manageable, smaller time frames interspersed with breaks will help your child stay focused and will also help them retain more of what they've learned. Focus on the big goals and don't sweat the small stuff. Set screen time limits and keep learning time free from distractions. Monitor phone, social media, and video game time each day, and this will help your child stay on task during their scheduled learning time. To close this introduction, I want to give you some words of encouragement. It's okay that the makeshift schooling experience was not okay. It's okay to take a breath and know you did your best. It's okay if your best was not perfect. We are all in survival mode and we are all in this together. Whatever your Corona schooling story is, our presenters this afternoon will provide you with resources, strategies, and tools to help you move forward through these tough times and stay safe, stay schooled, and stay sane. As part of their care package for you, our first speaker, Rebecca, will walk you through physics toolbox apps that help people to access science in real time with their smartphone. Next, Zeke will share science activities designed for both teachers and parents at the Science Museum Exploratorium. They call these activities snacks, and Zeke will be demonstrating how they work. Lastly, DaNel will share lessons that use inexpensive or readily available materials to engage students with rich learning opportunities. That concludes your introduction. Let's get started. Anne?
I'm handing it over to Rebecca. We're just going to segue in. We don't do a lot of formal introductions here. We kind of keep it casual, and we know that you got that as part of your invitation. So really, we want to make sure that the event is given to our speakers. So Rebecca, I think I'm going to find you in a lovely pastoral field somewhere.
That's right. That's my relaxing place, and someplace in central France. So thank you so much to the exchange, and thank you, so much for the introduction. So yes, I do want to talk a little bit about the use of smartphones, but I also really want to talk about STEM as dialogue and the importance of our words, whether we're interacting with STEM, whether we're interacting with technology. Because I think one of the things that we're really wanting to focus on right now is how do we help students, children and adults, and some of us have got older children too. How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them interested in STEM? One of my colleagues has always reminded me that STEM dialogue is perhaps the most important thing that we can do with children, and actually doing it at home is a phenomenal opportunity. Sometimes we don't know where to start though. And I would say, first of all, it's important for us to be inspired by our surroundings. Even under quarantine, hopefully we can take a little walk around the neighborhood. In this case, this is my daughter and my husband, both at the garden. We see plants, we see animals. And even if we didn't know a lot about STEM, right? We have an opportunity to just ask some fundamental questions, like, what do I notice? What do I wonder? And if we can take those questions and direct them towards science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and of course medicine too, I think we're doing a lot more good for our students and for our children and for ourselves than maybe we sometimes realize. So that's my first kind of point, is be inspired by what's around you, because you don't need, you might need some of that stuff from Amazon that's on back order, but a lot of times you actually don't. The other thing, and I heard Nawana also talk about this, it is so important to not stress about the answers. In science, it's the questions that really matter. I took my daughter on a walk a couple weeks ago and we saw some cornflowers, and I'd only ever seen blue cornflowers, but there were pink cornflowers of all different types of pink and purple cornflowers. And so we got into a conversation about, well, how did these colors get that way? Were they genetically modified? And the point is, it doesn't matter what the actual answer is. It's that we're asking the questions, making the observations, and again, being inspired by the world around us. The third point that I want to make is you do not need to know everything. Now, my background, I will actually tell you, I was a public high school physics teacher for many years. We've also homeschooled our daughter on and off. I'm still no expert. And when it came to helping my daughter with her Girl Scout activity, we're doing virtual Girl Scout meetings, I was getting stressed out about leading an at-home STEM workshop for the kids. So I wrote on Facebook and I said, can anybody help me out with this? And DaNel Hogan, who's actually one of our panelists today, said, I can do it. She already had some fabulous activities. and taught the students, taught the Girl Scouts how to do math magic and learn about binary number systems. So sometimes we just need to help each other. Don't be afraid to reach out. And the other thing too I'd say about that is you are a resource. If you know how to fry an egg, if you know how to make cheese out of milk and lemon juice, you're doing some really awesome STEM. Get the kids engaged with that. For my, another thing I would like to add, especially I know we're coming out of the school year, but going back into the school year, we're probably going to be doing a little bit more online learning, I think. Don't be afraid to supplement. There are so many great resources out there. In this particular case, my daughter had to do, that's our cat in the background, by the way. In this case, my daughter had to do a evaporation experiment, but I felt like I wanted her to do more than observing. I wanted her to understand some of the theory behind it too. Great resources like PhET interactive simulations, CK12, totally free, and they cover the whole gamut of STEM concepts. And again, I get the opportunity as a parent to engage with my child in that dialogue, and I wouldn't normally get that if she was doing it all in class. So I think there are some opportunities here. So that takes me to my fourth point, which is use free resources. There's a lot that's out there. And one of those resources is something that my husband and I put together called Physics Toolbox. We have something called Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite and also Physics Toolbox AR, which is graciously funded, some of that work's been funded by the National Science Foundation. These tools are available for Android and iOS, and they basically turn your smartphone into a laboratory tool. It's good for younger kids, but also especially for, you know, we often talk about children, but they're high school kids, right, who are really struggling to get by right now because, you know, there's some pretty advanced STEM that's going on in their classrooms, and it's really kind of difficult to translate that into an at-home environment. So some of these tools that we've produced help students to take data and do things as robust as determining the speed of sound and air, doing a lot of your classic physics and certainly chemistry, and also some mathematic activities. So I just hope that you use those as good resources because there's a lot that you can do in terms of exploring your world. We also have an AR tool, which allows you to visualize magnetic fields, which are normally invisible. So you can kind of go on a little hunt around your house. And if you've got some older kids involved in physics, they might learn a little bit about the properties of magnets and the Earth's magnetic field. And so I think the whole goal here, engage your students, engage your children and your families, right? Your spouses, your loved ones in critical conversations about STEM. You know, this is, I think, probably the most important thing as we engage them in these discussions. Take a step back for a minute from the STEM. Make sure that we take some time to think about what is science, who typically does science, who can do science. The answer is all of us can do science, right? But we often think about STEM as being a thing, an object, or maybe a process, which is so far removed from humanity. And the reality is that whenever we're asking questions, whenever we're trying to solve problems, those are inherently associated with our values. Hopefully the work that we do in STEM and in STEM education is ultimately directed towards improving society in some sense, helping us to rid society of inequity and injustice. So these are really some opportunities for conversations that, you know, might happen in the classroom, but certainly can and should happen within the context of the home. So with that, I just want to leave you with those 5 points. Be inspired by what's around you. Don't stress about the answers. Take that deep breath. Rely on the expertise of others. Use free tools. We hope that Physics Toolbox apps will be helpful to you and makes you take a step back from a meta level and think about what is the nature of STEM? What is the nature of science? Why is it important? And right now, why is it relevant? Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And I think we are going now to Zeke. I think we all missed the Exploratorium in real life, but we have Zeke with us to give us sort of the sense of being at the Exploratorium. And maybe Zeke can make us feel like we've had a little bit of that in our life. So I'm going to turn it over to Zeke. Are you ready, Zeke?
I am so excited to be here. Hi, my name is Zeke Kossover, and I was a high school science teacher for 21 years before dying and going to teacher heaven and working at the Exploratorium. We have a collection online of 300 science activities. They're all free, your tax dollars at work. And they are designed for everyone to use. We did a survey of the people who came to our website. About 1 million people a month come and visit our snack activities. And the second most common group of people to use them were teachers. The first most common group of people to come use the activities were students. They came because they thought they were so interesting and liked them so much that they came and worked on those activities and used them themselves. And the third biggest group were parents. These were people who just wanted to come and find things useful for their kids. And luckily, the Exploratorium really has the ability to present activities that everyone can use. And what I'd like to do now is show you one of those activities. So some of the activities are quite elaborate, but this one only requires a mirror. So here I am talking to you from Mirrorland. And the reason why I'm talking to you from Mirrorland is because this is a question that drunk and high adults and kids ask. And they want to know what's happening in Mirrorland. Because Mirrorland's weird. In Mirrorland, things are swapped left and right, but not up and down. And they often want to know, why are things swapped left and right in Mirrorland, but not up and down? For example, if I put some writing into the mirror, you can see it being reversed left and right. And so it seems like that's like a deep question. And if you ask your children about why that happens, they'll just say, well, that's because mirrors are super cool. But if you go on the internet and you try to figure out why are things swapped left and right in Mirrorland, you'll get a wide variety of bizarrely wrong answers. My favorite one of which is it's because you have two eyes. You have two eyes, and that's why things looked reversed in Mirrorland. I mean, it's easy to debunk, right? Just close one, right? And things don't suddenly become unreversed. So actually figuring out why Mirrorland is so weird, that's what we're going to spend some time doing. And that's what one of the activities that we have online explains how to do this with a student or a child. So, or, you know, people who come to a cocktail party at your house, you know, any of those. So here I am. And here is Mirror Zeke. Now, if I point that way, Mirror Zeke also points that way. It's a little bit complicated because I sort of want to say he's pointing left, but whose left are we talking about? So let's not use left and right here. Let's instead use cardinal directions. So at my house, that direction is west. So I'm going to point west. Now, which direction is Mirror Zeke pointing? He's also pointing west. And that might be a little bit surprising. He's pointing the same direction as I am. What if I point east? Well, Mirror Zeke also points east. That's sort of strange. I thought things were swapped. Well, let's keep going. What happens if I point up? Which way does Mirror Zeke point? Well, Mirror Zeke points up as well. And if I point down, Mirror Zeke also points down. It seems like Mirror Zeke points all the same directions as real Zeke does. So it's hard to imagine like what's different about the mirror. Now, I can already see it in the questions and answers. And that's one, someone has asked, like, there are other directions besides east and west and up and down. There's also in and out of the mirror. And at my house, those are north and south. So if I point north, which is that direction, Mirror Zeke points south. If I point into the mirror Mirror Zeke points out of the mirror. And that's the thing that's swapped. It's not left and right, it's in and out. So then you might be saying to yourself, I don't understand. If you're swapping in and out, how does that make lettering look reversed? Well, essentially you're swapping the front of the letter with the backs of the letters. And if you see letters from the back side, they look reversed. You probably have never actually thought about that, but here is some writing. I normally do this on a transparency, but I'm at home. I don't have any transparencies, but I do have a Ziploc bag, and right here you can see the writing. It looks normal to you right now. But if I swap it around, so that you're seeing it from the back side, see the writing from the back side, then things look reversed because you see it from the back side of the writing. And whenever you see writing from the back side, then that looks the opposite. And here I can quickly show you what that looks like in a barber shop window. So here's the barber shop window from the outside. Here's the barber shop window from the inside. When you look at a barber shop window from the inside, the writing looks backwards. And that's what's happening in a mirror from it. You're getting the reverse writing. One more example of that. Here's the letter F. I've got it all written out for you there. In a moment, I'm going to take away this clipboard. What do you think that that's going to look like? How do you think that'll look in the mirror? I'll give you a second to think about it. Will it look the right way? Will it look the wrong way? Let's see. So we take the F, and then in the mirror, as I figure out how to stand just so that it can be viewed. Ah, there you go. You can see that it looks the right way in the mirror because the mirror is seeing the back side of the letter and the back side gets flipped twice. Just got one more thing to give you links to all of our materials online so that you can go to them. And here's all our materials. They're all available for free, your tax dollars at work. Thank you very much. I super appreciate your time.
I feel compelled to go look in the mirror. You know, that's what I want to do now is go look in the mirror. That's what I'm craving. That was super cool. Thank you, Zeke. I feel like I spent a minute in the Exploratorium. First, I was in the fields of France with Rebecca. Then I was in the Exploratorium. I have no idea where DaNel is going to take us, but I've known DaNel long enough to know wherever she's going to take us, I want to go there. So and look, you've already got like a little happy balloon. You are awesome. You are ready. You've got your science mug. Go, DaNel.
That's right. So the painful part for me today is trying to decide the few things that I'll have time to show you. So I work at the STEMAZing project at the Pima County School Superintendent's Office in Tucson, Arizona. And as with other states around the country, you know, teachers are really struggling with not being well funded and not having a lot of money for supplies. And in science, technology, engineering, and math in particular, we need a lot of stuff. We want to be able to engage students with hands-on, minds-on activities. And oftentimes that money and that expense, as you know, is coming from the pockets of those educators themselves, which is not the way that it should be. So we need to vote about that and make it better, but it oftentimes is. So we are always looking for what we call STEM on the cheap resources and activities. And there's lots of ways to use inexpensive and readily available materials to engage students. And this can be, as we now know in the wake of the pandemic, done online and offline. And also, you know, we're also really focusing on how to make these activities and lessons accessible, not just to the students that have internet access and can watch videos and all of that. We also have rural students and students in our urban areas that don't have access to that technology. So not only are we looking for STEM on the cheap lessons and activities, but we're also looking for ones that are accessible through printed materials and directions that we can send to students, and maybe little care packages like we're talking about today, where those materials can be used to engage those students. Right now, I've been Skyping with some of my nieces and nephews and sending them a list in advance, like, okay, have these things available, and then we will engage you with those things. And it's kind of a mystery too, right? I send a list and they think, what in the heck are we going to do with these supplies? Because I don't usually give away exactly what we're doing. And this all kind of stemmed from working with the 3rd grade class from Innovation Academy here in Tucson. One of our teacher leaders, Mabel Rivera, said, oh, DaNel, will you help us out and engage our students online? And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And having a background in physics, I decided, well, maybe we'll do some Bernoulli demonstrations. So I said to the students, I sent their list, you need to have a strip of paper, a spoon, 2 empty coffee mugs, and an empty aluminum beverage can. And they were thinking, holy smokes, what are we gonna do? And I won't give it all away. You can go and look at some of the activities online, but one of the ones that I really like is, why would I want 2 empty coffee mugs and an empty aluminum beverage can? And the answer is, you can do a Bernoulli's demonstration with this. And so the challenge was, can I get this can to jump from here to there without touching it? And I can. Fantastic. I was trying this before we started and I did not get it to go in, but that's brilliant. So of course, that's amazing that it went in. That doesn't always happen. You have to practice a little bit. But then what do you notice? What do you wonder? So back to what Rebecca was engaging us with. We want students to really be making sense of the world themselves. And we're looking at this big shift in science instruction that started with the development of the next generation science standards, founded in fact on a document from the National Academy of Sciences, the framework for K-12 science education. And those standards are really asking for teachers to let students do the sense making, let them notice and wonder and explore. So some other things that we have here today. This is our pool noodle rocket. So I've made this out of a length of a pool noodle with rubber bands and some string. And this is from some packaging that has cardboard like you would find on a cereal box. And now if I stretch this, I can shoot it across the room and there it goes. One of the collections that we really love and we have in our STEM and Cheap collection is some great projects from somebody named Arvind Gupta, and he has a collection called Toys from Trash. And this is his ball bounce project, which we just made out of an empty Gatorade bottle, and we cut that off, and then we put a rubber band here, and I can pull this down, and then I can launch this also across the room. And then once you make these, so I would say doing that just by itself, making a project, making a rocket is step one. We've made something, it's been hands-on, it's been engaging, but to make it minds-on, now you need to do the engineering piece. So how might you engineer this to make it better? And what does better mean? And how many times are you going to try something new and then make it better? And we would say you need to iterate through that engineering design process at least 5 times before we're going to say you're really engineering. But we've also been, to make this more accessible to students, designing notice and wonder journals, and we now have an ideas engineering journal to help students think about how you can modify something. Like, have you considered making something bigger or smaller? What other materials can you use? So that's a fun one as well. And you're probably wondering about this one because it's so great. And I have to say, I'm super proud of this head on here because we used to just make what we call the rattle rider without this head on the top, but anything with googly eyes and a balloon and you get to draw a face on it is so much better. So we just had some preschool students that I was working with online, and we made these rattle riders. So inside of this pool noodle link, so we're using pool noodles again, I've actually put inside of here a $1 toothbrush that you can get at the dollar store. And so we bought these toothbrushes, we put the battery, it even comes with a battery for $1, like hashtag STEM on the cheap. And so what we did is we stuck that in there, we put some markers on this, and then you can turn on the electric toothbrush that is inside of here. And now this little guy is gonna rattle around on the piece of paper that I have on my desk. And it's going to make a drawing, which I made for you before in advance because you don't have a ton of time to do all the rest of that. So this is great. Again, hands-on and engaging, but now how are you going to engineer it? Can you get it to make shapes other than circles? Can you get it to go in a straight line? What does changing this do? What does changing that do? There's just so much to explore with stuff like this. Also with my nieces and nephews recently, we were able to share the Cartesian Diver, which has been a lot of fun. And so that Cartesian Diver we made with a ketchup packet, which is really amazing. And so if you just squeeze on this bottle, then the diver will go down to the bottom, or it will go back up to the top when you let it go, which is really great. And what's nice, again, with STEM on the cheap is that you can, just with the ketchup packet and an empty 2-liter bottle, make this work. One thing I do like to do is fool people and pretend like I'm pulling it down with my magnetized finger, which is not true, but I did have my brother and sister-in-law trying that out for quite a while the other day. So there's lots more. We can show you how to turn a Slinky into a Star Wars sound machine and on. But just know that there is a lot you can do to engage students both in school and at home with STEM on the cheap materials that lend themselves to really rich learning opportunities.
So Rick, I think Rick has now got some questions going on in the background. I think we're going to bring all of our speakers back. And may I just say that I'm sure that you hear this all the time. I'm sure all of you hear this. Why didn't I have teachers like you when I was in school? Because I think that you represent the best. And I think all of you know I'm a huge fan of the Einstein Fellows, but I'm not the only one. And I'm sure all of your students feel exactly the same way. And now we're your students. So Nuwana, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to go away for a little while you guys do the tough job.
Thanks, Anne. So we got a really good question that I would like to ask Rebecca to start off. We had an audience member who put in there into the question field, the magnetic fields. Can you explain a little bit more how that works with the augmented reality? What's the difference between it picking up actual magnetic fields or it picking up some sort of field that's coming from this augmented reality? And then if you would also share with us again the name of the app and whether or not it works on laptops.
Sure. So it's called Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite. The AR is actually in the suite, but you could also look up Physics Toolbox AR. That's a standalone app, but I don't know why you wouldn't just want to get the suite because it has so many different tools. Basically, what the augmented reality does is there's actually inside of your phone all these different sensors. So of course you've got a microphone, you've got GPS systems, you also have magnetic field detectors, light detectors, motion detectors, and a lot of us don't realize how powerful these tools can be, and they can be used for like doing real science. Something like 60% of our users are actually like research scientists and engineers and things. It was developed for students though. So the answer to the question about the fields, they're not computer generated. They're actually taking the magnetic field measured by the magnetometer, and they're linking it with spatial awareness using the camera, kind of acting as eyes, and also using the accelerometer and the gyroscope, which looks for like straight line motion and also rotational motion. So it's a really great example of lots of inputs and how you can get meaningful visualizations out of lots of inputs. You can't use it on a standard laptop or standard desktop, but if your laptop is like a Chromebook and has accelerometers in it, you can probably use the microphone, light meter, and also accelerometer.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. We have another question. I'd like to ask this question to DaNel. Could you please talk a little bit more about what was in the bottle in the diver experiment, and then also share again the name of the resource?
Yeah, so this one comes from, there's lots of Cartesian divers. There's lots of versions of this activity. This one just happens to be made with a ketchup packet that's put into a 2-liter bottle. And then when you squeeze the bottle, it changes the density of that packet, which causes it to sink. And then when you let the pressure off, then it floats again. But I was also saying I like to fool people just for a little bit, although we don't want to fool them forever. So we'll explain to them how we're tricking them a little bit. But I usually say, oh, I've magnetized my finger, and watch, I'm pulling it down because I magnetized it. And I got this great story from my friend Carmen. She does this with her pre-K students, but it's fun to trick other people for a little while, and then hopefully engage them to critically analyze what you're being told, and don't always believe what people tell you, and ask questions like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think you can magnetize your finger. You can't. What I'm doing, of course, is just squeezing with my other hand as I'm matching it to go down. If you practice a little bit, you can do that. And you can find all this stuff. We have our collection on our website for STEMAZing, STEMAZing.org, but also We get a lot of resources from Zeke's collection at the Exploratorium, the science snacks. And so on our website, if you go to the STEM on the Cheap collection, we like to highlight lots of different places that have these really great activities.
Great,
Janelle,
thank you.
did some of the water leak out, the ketchup leak out? Why is it yellow in there?
Okay, Zeke, because I was using this with another kind of Cartesian diver that was using a hexa, and it was a little bit rusty in there before when I switched this out. So I'm reusing the bottle.
Oh, okay. And the water too.
Yeah, it's a good question. No, the ketchup didn't leak out, but thanks for noticing that. And maybe some other folks were wondering too. So yeah, it's I'm reusing it, and it had some rusty stuff in it before that.
And now, can you just clarify for some people? I think they're having some difficulty seeing what's in the bottle. It is filled with fluid, yes?
It's just water, and it's a 2-liter bottle. And then you want to find a ketchup packet, and you can, if you Google Cartesian Diver, you can find lots of different examples of this. And so you want to find a ketchup packet that just barely floats when you put it in water, and then you stick it in here. And then once you have it in there and you fill it all the way up with water and then put the cap on it. And then when I squeeze it just a little bit now, it'll go down. And another little trick I like to share is if you find a ketchup packet and it sinks, you can actually add salt to your water to change the density of the water that's in here so that it will just barely float. And then you can still make a Cartesian diver even with the ketchup packets that sink as well. So you don't have to keep hunting and hunting and hunting until you find just the right ketchup packet, which is important.
Great, thanks, DaNel. Zeke, let's find out from you. Can you please tell us a little bit more again about the Exploratorium? And then we had a question about whether or not there are any Facebook groups or other groups that teachers can join there.
So the Exploratorium is a science museum in San Francisco, California. Our group there, it was founded in 1969, and the Teacher Institute, which is the group that I'm in, was founded in 1984 by teachers who saw all the great exhibits that we have at our science museum, and which, if you have a science museum near you, we probably built some of your exhibits as well. But we, you know, those floor exhibits were very expensive, so teachers were trying to find cheaper ways to bring the Exploratorium into their classroom, and so that's where the snacks came from, because the Exploratorium had written a book about how to make exhibits, and they called that the cookbook, and so we make smaller exhibits, so we call them the snacks. In any case, we'd love to have you come visit us, and when we open up again, if you ever happen to be in San Francisco, and there are lots of Facebook groups for people who are teachers or just interested in getting more science content. The Exploratorium doesn't run any in particular, but there's several about NGSS science. So if you search for NGSS science in your Facebook search bar, you'll find ones in all the different disciplines. And those are really the ones you're going to probably be most interested in, because NGSS really encourages hands-on instruction. And so those kinds of work will be the ones that'll feel probably most, they'll feel like the things you want to do at home more.
Great, thank you, Zeke. We have a question that I'd like to open up to all of the panelists. Are there any pre-K or kindergarten level activities for very young students, and where might those resources be found?
So I can jump in on that one.
Great.
We actually do a lot of work with early childhood educators, and we're not only working just in English, but also in Spanish as well. Again, I'm in Tucson, so we have a lot of early childhood educators here who are Spanish speakers and engaging children that speak Spanish as well. And a lot of our families speak Spanish at home, so it's nice to have resources in both languages. But yeah, we definitely love engaging pre-K and early childhood educators and those children to make sense of the world. And those are the ones that are like noticing and wondering everything in terms of all of their questions. And so we want to value that and definitely connect them with resources that are developmentally appropriate. And so certainly we have a collection that's aimed at that, and a growing collection, right? So we continue to work with communities of practices of in classroom early childhood educators sharing the ways that they engage young children using science, technology, engineering, and math.
Great, thank you, DaNel. We've got another question. Zeke, you were talking about NGSS, and the question is, are there resources that connect these specific tools with NGSS?
So we are currently writing, so the activities currently don't say anything in particular about NGSS. That's next generation science standards. They don't say anything currently online, but one of our summer projects at the Exploratorium is putting those links to each activity to the various NGSS standards. We do have subject information on them, so that will often be enough, like saying physics and electricity is probably enough to figure out which of those science standards it meets, but we are additionally adding the disciplinary core ideas to them online and the cross-cutting concepts and the science and engineering practices over, we'll probably have it done by the beginning of the next school year, but it's taking us a little bit of time getting them put together, especially since we're all still at home here in San Francisco. Right. And so getting all together to do stuff's a challenge.
Great, thank you, Zeke. Rebecca, we have a question here. Any resources that cross-reference health for kids?
Oh, I don't think I'm the right person for that question.
Sure, any panelist.
I'm not sure. See, we're all physics, all three of us. Our background is mostly physics, yes, which has lots of great health connections. I can think of a lot of things relating to cancer treatments and nuclear physics, but I can't make any specific recommendations right now, other than PhET simulations, which peripherally look at things like how MRIs work. But I don't think that's what the question's going after right now.
Sure.
Zeke or DaNel, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing. It's out of my area of expertise, but that is the joy of Google as well. Zeke, what do you have?
So the physics we have obviously bunches of physics on our website, but we have the science snacks are for all disciplines, and so you'll also be able to find. We have a whole section on COVID-related materials, things like how do viruses spread, how do antibodies work, what's the idea behind vaccines, and some statistics about how diseases spread. We aren't really focused on things like nutrition, but we also have things like how do you make yogurt? How does that happen? Or how does cheese work? And we have a whole section on the website on the science of cooking and some general ideas about health, but nothing super specific.
Okay, great. Thank you, Zeke. Let's see if we have another question here.
I have a question for Rebecca.
That'd be great.
I would love to know about, I know you have some play thing that you've done with Physics Toolbox, and I'd love to know more about it because I love the app suite that you have already. But I'm curious what the heck that is and how people can use it.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So we realized, so everything that whole Physics Toolbox sensor suite, right, was developed for my own high school physics students, and now it's been used by over 2 million people. But we wanted to make something that was a little bit more accessible to younger kids, and so we ended up creating within Physics Toolbox sensor suite. There's a mode called Play, and it's developed for children ages 8 through 12 with their families. And instead of just being, a data sensor visualization tool with graphs and numbers, it actually introduces children and their families, and adults like to play it on their own too, to 7 different challenges where you have to use your phone and you have to get certain measurements or readings in order to advance to the next step. You have to answer some questions correctly, and then you learn about people and careers that require the use of that kind of sensor. So as an example, one of the challenges is you might have to go to a room that's really quiet, and then you have to go to a room where you have a certain level between, like a certain range of sound or decibels. And another one, you might have to go find some place that's bright and then some place that's really dim, or create some kind of a shading tool. So it's kind of a fun app and a really good introduction to how to use technology in a really hands-on way at home. And I think the only thing you need for it is a plastic bag or a container and a piece of string and something that you could swing from the string. That's like it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. That's all the time we have now for questions and answers, and I'm going to turn it back over to Anne.
Excellent. Thanks to all of you. And we really appreciate it. As I said before, I always am a huge fan of educators. I love teachers. There's a meeting every year, maybe virtual next year, the National Science Teachers Association. And it's one of my favorite places to go because you're just surrounded by so much energy and so much positivity. And I have to say that I kind of took away some things from today that Rebecca, you know, she told us to open our eyes, look at the world, and to see and to wonder. Zeke told us we better look in the mirror while we're at it and try to see behind those backward words to make some sense of it. And as DaNel said, whatever we have in our hands, whatever we've got, look at it, see how it works, and then figure out how you can make it better. And I think together, those are important things to think about. But it's also tied into what Nuwana told us right at the beginning. We all have to be kind to ourselves and to others. This is a really tough time, and it's important to remember that everyone is feeling that way. So be kind, forgive yourself, forgive others, and find the way forward. So we're very grateful that you were here with us today, especially because we asked you to come before and we had to make a change and you still came back. So thank you. We'll be back probably, July 1st with our next event, right, Rick?
July 1st. Also, I think we did end up having to cancel an event around Neil Shubin. We are in the process of rescheduling it. Thank you for your patience if you're also RSVP for that event.
Exactly. So we're going to keep doing events. We've got some other things in the works and some things that we're kind of noodling on. So stay tuned. Come back again. If you have comments for us, please send them. Rick, you have a survey you'll probably send out?
Yeah, we'll be sending a survey. Please do fill it out if you have a moment. It's only a couple of questions and it really does help us to shape our next events. So we'll send you a link. And we're going to send you also, when we post the video, we'll try to reference as many links from the talks as possible in the description. I know a lot of you were asking for the links in the Q&A.
Excellent. Okay. Well then, until July 1st, we'll see you all later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.